Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the 86 F's to Give podcast. I'm your host, Al, and I am so grateful that you are here with me today for episode 13. That is crazy that I just said 13. That means we are over 3 months into this podcast, and I just want to talk a little bit about some of the things that I've learned about myself, about podcasting. I just wanted to do a little check-in because we're a quarter in, if I get to a year, this would be our quarter one mark, so I just want to do a little Q1 reflection, if you will. It's just been so cool for me, and I know I say this every episode, but it truly has been a really awesome accountability piece for me. It's something I get to do every week, and that is some of the best parts of my week, so it's definitely something I've looked forward to. I've also learned that, I already knew I was a perfectionist, but I've tried to give myself grace in recognizing that not every episode is going to be my favorite episode, and that is okay. I still think people are taking things away from episodes that maybe I am not as proud of as others, and that's also been a really cool thing to learn is, I'll put up an episode that I'm like, oh gosh, I don't know if anyone should even listen to this, or I'm nervous for people to listen to it, whatever, and then those will be the episodes that people are like, hey, I really liked that, what you said, and I'm like, oh, we liked that one. But no, you guys know what I mean. It's just sometimes when you create things, they're not all going to be amazing and perfect. That's okay, right? That is okay that they're not all bangers, right? Not every song on an album is a banger, okay? So that's been a nice thing to realize for me, as well as just overcoming my perfectionism, as well as, it's been a cool connecting point with friends and family. And I've even, my friends have made me pitch it to their friends and strangers when we're out and things like that. And people's reaction that don't even know me and don't have to be like, oh, that's such a cool idea, have had that reaction and really been supportive. I've gotten a few random followers just because we've been talking about it in a public setting and people have overheard and they've been like, oh, what? That's really cool. So that has been really neat too, is just to receive positive feedback from not only my friends and family that that's what they have to do. That's my friends, from strangers as well. So yeah, I'm just really grateful to have started this and to be 13 weeks in, and I don't plan on stopping anytime soon. I know the last few weeks have been a little late or delayed. This one probably will be as well, considering it is 9:22 on Thursday morning right now as I'm recording this. But it's all about transparency here, and that kind of leads me into today's topic about not being happy all the time and how it's okay to have ebbs and flows with your emotions and your baselines of just how you exist in life. And yeah, I mean, these past few weeks have been just kind of funky for me. And I, 2 episodes ago, I talked about trying to get out of a funk and said that the few weeks before that I had been in a funk, and it just has started to become a month and a couple weeks. And I don't want to use the word struggling in a bad way, but I'm just struggling to get out of said funk. But I'm fine. I am going through the world. I'm existing. I'm doing what I have to do. And I'm just kind of giving myself grace, which is kind of the main thing we're going to talk about today as well. So let's just hop into it without further ado. Thank you for indulging me for a few minutes to talk about how proud I am of this podcast. And yeah, so let's get into the topic of today's episode. Today we are 86ing being happy all the time. And this is both talking about putting pressure on ourselves to be happy all the time, as well as expecting others, those happy people in our lives, expecting them to just be happy and bubbly every single time you interact with them, because that is impossible, right? Very unrealistic. Why this topic matters to me, I always like to kind of start with that, just to kind of, explain why I'm so passionate about each thing that I talk about in each of these episodes. This is important to me because I am one of those people that gets described as happy, bubbly, energetic, all the time. And I actually am starting to think, this is a side note, and maybe we can dig deeper into this into another episode, but I'm starting to think that people with ADHD are those types of people that just get categorized as happy, bubbly, excited, because they just have so much energy. And for some people that's how ADHD manifests. I think that's how it does for me, is I just am on go and really excited and get really passionate and have a lot of energy. And I think that maybe translates into other people's minds as I mean, I also would describe myself as a positive, optimistic, and happy person. So I think that combination is kind of just like a bubble of, or like an explosion of happiness, and people kind of see me as this bubbly, happy person all the time, which just is simply not true, obviously. And I've talked a little bit about my struggles with mental health on here. I definitely have anxiety in certain situations and have seasonal depression from time to time, and I'll get into that in a little bit as well. But I think that's why I'm excited to talk about this today, is because I am one of those people that gets called that and gets asked, oh, they're like, why aren't you, are you okay? Like, you're not your normal bubbly self. And it's like, actually, I'm fine. I'm just not bouncing off the walls today. Like, let me have a chill day, okay? But no, I know people ask that coming from like a sense of caring about your well-being, and, you're not acting normal to them. So like they are concerned, and I get it. But I want to talk about how that question can kind of be a little toxic and harmful in a bit as well. So that's kind of a brief overview of what we're going to talk about today and why this topic is important to me. So first, I wanted to talk about not putting pressure on ourselves to be that happy, bubbly person all the time. And like I just said, I generally identify as a happy person, right? Like overarching, that would be one of the words I use to describe my personality. But like I also just said, I also struggle with mental health, and that simply does not allow me to be at my baseline happy, excited, passionate all the time, right? That it's just impossible, because mental health is a really serious thing that takes over our brains and does not allow us to be our normal bubbly selves, right? Or just our general baseline, right? So the number one thing I always say to myself when I'm in a sad or anxious like moment or time in my life is that I just don't want to be sad anymore. I don't want to feel like this anymore. I don't want to be sad. I don't want to be anxious anymore. And I think that way of thinking is a little toxic to myself, because one, I'm not giving myself grace, and two, I'm giving all the negative emotions that I'm feeling the complete control and power over my body, my brain, my like how I'm feeling, how I'm existing in the world. And that is something that I do think we have control over. And again, I'll say this a million times, I am aware of the struggles of depression affects our brain, how anxiety affects our brain. Like, I'm 100% totally aware of that. And I could definitely do more research and learn more about all the science and chemical imbalances and all that. But I understand that like that affects us greatly. So if I'm saying anything where I'm like, you have the choice to like, just know I'm saying that from a place of like when you're not currently depressed or currently anxious. Okay. And even then, I do think there's still a bit of us in us that has that power to kind of overcome or work through said mental health issue, and not totally on our own. Sometimes that's with therapy or with medicine, but you know what I'm saying? Like, there's a way to work through it. So I don't really in any situation want to give those negative emotions complete control and power over my body, right? And that is something that I'm continuously working on. I've been working on for years, and something I will keep working on, right? And so first, I want to talk about grace, giving yourself grace, because no one is anything all of the time, right? Those are all words that are extreme. Like, everybody's just happy all the time. No one is anything all of the time, right? So when I think about grace, and we always just say like, oh, give yourself grace. And I don't know if I've ever really defined what that meant for me. So I kind of did a quick Google and pulled some things that resonated with me. Sorry if you can hear Puda on the floor, like scratching around. He's just right below me. But some of the things that resonated with me about grace and giving myself grace is that first, you have to be aware, accepting, or acknowledging, kind of all the same words there, whatever you're feeling, right? You need to be aware of your emotions. You need to be able to identify what you're feeling, and maybe not why you're feeling that way, but just knowing like, hey, I'm feeling a little off today, or I'm feeling a little anxious today, I'm feeling a little down today. Just being able to identify that, and then also being able to acknowledge that it's okay to feel whatever you're feeling, right? Acknowledging that your feelings are valid and accepting those feelings, right? Sometimes, like my quote that I just said, I always say is like, I just don't want to feel like this. That is not me accepting the feelings that I'm feeling, and it's not me validating the feelings that I'm feeling. And that is a negative way to go about trying to overcome these feelings, and just putting out negative words into the universe of just saying like, oh, I don't want to feel like this. Like, okay, that is not doing anything to help me not feel like this, right? Like, let's actually give ourselves grace, do the work, and kind of come back from this. And so once you are like aware of what you're feeling, you kind of acknowledge that your feelings are valid, and you accept that that's how you're feeling, I then want to give myself some self-compassion, right? Challenge my negative self-talk with positive self-talk. Tell myself that my feelings are valid. just, use affirmations, write sticky notes to myself and leave them around my apartment or in my planner or on my mirror, or whatever it may be. Like, actively combat the negative self-talk, because that is something that you do have a choice over. I know our brains tell us things when we're anxious or depressed or going through other mental health issues, but out loud, you can make the choice to write something down that's positive about yourself, or to write something on your mirror that's going to be a good reminder the first thing you see when you wake up. Those are things that we actively can choose to do. And so that is my next step in giving myself grace, right? After I've acknowledged how I'm feeling, let's combat those negative thoughts that I'm having. And then another piece that I thought was really interesting was they talked about forgiveness when you're giving yourself grace or giving others grace. I feel like that was a huge piece that I maybe not included in giving myself grace in the past, is that forgiveness piece. And maybe in not every situation is the forgiveness necessary, but if there is something that you like are feeling down about, something that you said or you did that hurt someone's feelings, or you messed something up at work and you're feeling the pressure of that or whatever, just adding in that forgiveness piece into your grace giving steps is huge, right? Because I feel like a lot of times we hold on to the feelings of maybe guilt or regret or something that we did or said or whatever it may be, that kind of doesn't allow us to work through whatever those feelings are, because we're holding on to those negative feelings and not giving ourselves that forgiveness to then work through them. And then the last step that kind of resonated with me when I did my quick Google search about grace is that set realistic expectations moving forward. I've talked about this in multiple episodes, but that is such a key piece in being able to move forward from your funk or your anxious moments or your depressive episodes, because there has to be some sort of action point, right? So when you set those realistic goals, you're able to then be like, okay, this is what I'm going to start working on, or what I'm going to start doing to then overcome whatever I was just feeling. Does that make sense? There's some sort of like call to action basically when you set goals or realistic expectations. And so I do believe when we're talking to ourselves and expecting ourselves to be happy all the time, I do believe that that is toxic to our like self-worth, because if we think that we're not our happy versions of ourselves, that we're not like happy, like a good person to be around, or that we're not being a good friend, or that like we're not worthy because we're not happy and bringing positive energy to whatever scenario we're in. And that I think is really toxic, because being happy and bubbly all the time like isn't your only piece of your identity. You have so much more about you, and it is okay to be all of those other things and to also be sad sometimes. Like, you are still a good person, you are still a good friend, and that is all okay. That like they can be true at the same time. Again, I do also believe that everything that we put out into the universe and that we say out loud about ourselves or in our heads or write down, all is what will get back to us. So if we say negative things, that's what we're going to continue to believe and feel. But if we put out affirmations and positive things and manifestations and prayers and things that, whatever it may be for you, that sticks and resonates in your head, I do think that we will get rewarded with, more positive feelings and abundance and things that are going to only contribute good things in our lives. And so I want to do a whole other episode on self-talk and 86ing negative self-talk. So I'll talk more about that in that episode. But like, truly what we put out into the world is what we get back. And that is with our actions, our words, and also not just for others, it's for ourselves as well. So all of that to say that giving yourself grace is the number one piece when you are putting pressure on yourself to be your happy person all the time. Like, you are allowed to have a moment, okay? Everyone's allowed to have a week, have a month, have a year that maybe we aren't our truest selves, because real shit is going on in our lives, and it's okay to struggle sometimes. It's okay that we're not happy all the time. And I literally actually just screenshotted a TikTok of this girl that said, if it was sunshine all the time, it would be a desert. And deserts are like the least habitable place, not the least, but one of like the most inhabitable places. Is that English? You know what I mean? Like, nothing lives there besides cacti and snakes. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we need a little rain, we need a little darkness, we need a little storm, we need something to shake it up sometimes, so that we have a reflection point and a reference point to realize what good things are happening in our lives and what we do need to be grateful for. I will probably post that on social media because I think I botched it a little bit, but you know what I mean? Like, if it was all rainbows and sunshines all the time, it would not be a beautiful world, and we wouldn't have such beautiful reflections on the good things that we do have. So, okay, now let's move on to talking about putting pressure on other people in our lives to be happy all the time, and how I think this can cause kind of toxic / fake positivity, and it's also just harmful to people in general that are already in a sad state, right? Because when you are saying those things to them, they're already down, and then you're going to be like, oh, you're not your normal bubbly self. Like, okay, no shit. Huda has entered the chat because he cannot sit still. So if you're watching, he is now sitting on the chair with me. But first, I do think putting pressure on others to be happy all the time can kind of cause them to experience fake positivity or toxic positivity, because they are feeling pressure to kind of act happy or optimistic all the time, even if that's not how they're genuinely feeling. That I think is really sad, because one, it doesn't allow them to like feel their truest emotions in front of the people that they're supposed to be able to feel them in front of. And also, I'm a big fan of faking it till you make it. Like, I definitely use some fake positivity at work sometimes when I just need to like get through the day without anyone being like, what's wrong? Because if they ask me that, I'll cry. Okay. So I understand that for sure. But I do think there's also times where you're not able to physically fake it. Like, it's really hard. And if people feel the pressure that they have to be positive, or someone's gonna come up to them and ask, hey, what's wrong with you? Like, that is a really like brain like twister, because you just don't know how to even like act, and you can't be your truest self and feel whatever you're feeling in front of people. And that is like, I am a huge advocate for feeling your emotions and expressing your emotions and crying in public and all the things, like crying in general. But like, I am a huge advocate for just feeling how you feel no matter where you are and who's around. Again, I understand there's circumstances where you have to maybe be strong for other people in your life, and you feel more of those emotions behind closed doors or whatever it may be. But generally, I think people should be able to just feel how they feel without having to worry about people being like, oh, you're not being your normal self, or what's wrong with you, or you're not the Allie I know, or like, it's just like, of course I'm not. Like, things happen in people's lives, and it's okay that I'm sad, and I appreciate your concern, but maybe word it in a way that is not so, I wouldn't say judgmental, but just like in a way where it's making people feel like they are not, or like they're letting people down kind of, it's like, oh, people rely on me to be that happy person, that sunshine, that bubbling light in their life. And it's like, okay, well, I can't be that all the time. And so, it puts pressure on people that are already kind of down and out, and they don't need that. We don't need that, no one needs that. And so that kind of leads me into how it can be toxic for people or harmful to people that are already sad, to then say, oh, you're not your normal self. Like, that's just going to make them feel worse and more sad. And, that is something that they're already probably worrying about. Like we just talked about, like they're already worried about people noticing that they're sad, or they're leaving the bathroom at work and their eyes are puffy because they just had a mental breakdown at work, and they're already worried that people are going to notice. And so to say comments like that in that kind of like joking, half judgy way is really harmful and toxic, because we care about our friends, and when we notice they're down, like I think a way we can kind of ask them is maybe in a more private setting, or wait until the end of the day at work and just be like, hey, I really noticed that you seemed not like your normal self today, and I just wanted you to know that I'm here, and if you need anything, you can always reach out, blah, 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 blah. Not even so much like asking a question, just like reminding people that you are there for them. I think when you ask people that are already kind of having a moment, are you okay, or what's wrong, it just puts more pressure on them to be able to reassure other people that they're okay, or like to kind of dodge those questions and have to come up with an answer that's, maybe they're not ready to explain why they're feeling the way they are, or they don't want to ever, tell people why they're feeling the way they are, and it just puts them in an awkward position. So I think doing it in a more private setting, or maybe call them after work, or just a 1v1 kind of, eliminates the awkwardness and having to have that conversation in the middle of the day, and then they have to go back to work feeling all upset or whatever it may be. So just kind of being more mindful when you're asking people in your lives, why aren't you being your normal bubbly self? Like, it goes deeper than you think it does. And I know that question comes from a place of caring about them, but just maybe take 1 second and think about what you're asking before you ask it. I think this whole concept of like not being happy, bubbly all the time is hard for me, because I have gone through so much of my life without a therapist, without medication, or really much like mental health support besides my support system. My mom obviously is a therapist, but also an incredible mother. And then my dad, my brother, my friends, my support system, like those have really been my rock, and just my self-reflection and the people I choose to surround myself with has really gotten me through most of any of the struggles that I've gone through. And I think, when we're in like high school, the things that feel like the end of the world are like getting a F on a test or failing a class or whatever. And that is like so minuscule into like what's actually going to come when you become an adult. Like, they're just not comparable. When I, am an adult and I'm going through real adult things and, breakups or people passing away or not getting jobs you want, like real things that are like actually challenging to go through. And then all of a sudden I'm like, well, why can't I just like get through this by just talking to my friend? And it's like, well, no, maybe you do need a therapist. Maybe you do need to, talk to someone else and get some more support or whatever it may be. And I think it's like okay to need more support than you did when you were even last year, like a younger version of yourself, because as you get older and you age, so do the problems and the things that you face in life. And it is okay to then need the adequate support and help to overcome those things that you're going through. And that is okay. And so I'm trying to tell myself that now. When I was in high school and it felt like my world was ending because I thought I wasn't going to get into college because I failed pre-calc, like, girl, you had no idea what was coming, so it's just funny to reflect and realize the things that were big problems then are actually like things I wish I was going through now. Obviously I'm not in school, but just like I wish failing a test was like the biggest of my issues as a almost 26-year-old, you know what I mean? And so I'm sure that's relatable to other people too. It's like, and none of this is a cry for help. I know everyone is going through things. Life is freaking hard and we all face things that are challenging to go through. Obviously that is what life is. So yeah, I think that's just kind of a reflection point for me, is like why this feels like an extra layer of challenge for me. It's just because it's not something that I'm used to feeling. Like, I have just always been happy, bubbly Al, and now that I'm an adult going through adult shit, it's hard to just be happy, bubbly Al all the time, and that is okay. So yeah, that is kind of what I wanted to end on. I wanted to also say, like, if you're somebody that people call happy, bubbly, energetic all the time, even if people say that to you and you feel like you want to call them out in the moment and be like, hey, I actually am not happy all the time. Not in like not in a cry for help way, but just be like, I don't really want that expectation set on me, and I would really love if we kind of didn't use that to describe me, because it's actually more harmful than good. And I know you mean it in a positive way, but I would prefer to not be described as that way. I might start doing that, and I think that is totally okay and valid to ask of people in your life. I would actually like to use other words to describe me. There's so much more about my identity and my personality that I would rather be the forefront of, me when you describe me to people. So I might start doing that. I challenge you to start doing that if you're somebody that struggles with somebody or with people calling you happy, bubbly all the time. Take a shot for every time I say happy and bubbly. Jesus Christ. But anywho, that is kind of where I want to leave you all today. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the 86 F's to Give podcast. I am so happy you are here. If no one has told you recently, I love you, I am proud of you, and you are doing the dang thing, and keep up the great work. You have a safe place here at the 86 F's to Give pod community. So if you ever need to vent, chat, I'm here. Send us a DM, send us a comment, all the things. What is one thing you're doing for yourself this week in the comments of this episode? I would love to hear. Yeah, thank you all for listening, and I will see you next week. Love you guys. Bye.